They always say America is built on family, football, and freedom. I used to believe that, until I realized my own suburban home looked less like a Norman Rockwell painting and more like a rejected Netflix pilot called Toxic Love in the Midwest. My wife, let's just call her Sarah because every cheating wife in these stories seems to be named Sarah, was the kind of woman who swore she believed in loyalty. She made promises under the 4th of July fireworks, whispered, "I love you forever," while apple pie cooled on the counter, and clutched my hand at Sunday church as if betrayal were a sin she'd never dare commit. That's the kind of American dream we all buy into. But here's the plot twist. You never see betrayal coming from inside the barbecue. See, in our quiet cul-de-sac, family friends are closer than kin. My best buddy, the guy who helped me fix my truck, the man who babysat my kids when I was working late shifts at the factory, was practically Uncle Tom. He was the kind of guy who'd bring over Bud Light on game days and argue with me about whether Tom Brady was overrated. He was safe, familiar, part of the furniture of my so-called American life. And that was the conspiracy. While I was buying into loyalty, these two were running a side hustle in infidelity, hiding in plain sight like some suburban CIA operation. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying my wife was part of a government psyop, but sometimes, when you look at how neatly the lies are arranged, you wonder if maybe the Pentagon's got a cheating wife division, just to test men like me. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. She'd disappear for Pilates class, but I checked the gym parking lot. Her car was never there. She'd come home smelling like cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine, unless the Tide Pods started experimenting with eau de betrayal scent. I asked her about it once, and she smiled that suburban Stepford smile and said, "Honey, you're paranoid." Americans are experts at gaslighting. Maybe we invented it, right alongside fast food and reality TV. And here's the kicker. The family friend was always there, at birthday parties, backyard barbecues, even at Thanksgiving carving the turkey. I mean, what kind of guy stabs the turkey and the marriage on the same day? That's not friendship, that's infidelity wrapped in gravy. But I kept quiet, because that's what men do in these neighborhoods. You don't blow the whistle until you have proof. So I played detective. Not the cool kind, like in those noir films with whiskey and cigarette smoke, but the paranoid suburban dad kind. I counted how many miles were on her car after yoga. I checked receipts, and I found one from a motel off the interstate. The date matched a night she told me she was at a church fundraiser. Imagine raising funds for God while raising hell with my so-called brother. That's betrayal on a biblical level. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like some twisted parody of marriage. Maybe this wasn't love at all. Maybe it was toxic love, the kind of cheating setup where everyone's smiling at Sunday service while plotting their next affair in the pews. America runs on Dunkin' Donuts, sure, but it also runs on secrets and lies. And my cheating wife was the franchise owner. I started thinking revenge. Not the messy kind with cops involved. No, I'm talking American revenge. The cinematic kind, the type that ends with a man walking away in slow motion while a country song plays in the background. The first taste of freedom after a toxic love story ends in flames. But first, I needed more than suspicion. I needed the smoking gun. One night, while Sarah said she was staying late at work, I drove past Tom's house. And there it was, her car in his driveway, parked right beside his shiny Ford F-150, like they were some twisted married couple themselves. That sight was enough to turn my stomach and make me laugh at the same time. It was so predictable it almost felt scripted, like an episode of a bad sitcom called My Cheating Wife and My Clueless Best Friend. The laugh track was missing, but I swear I could hear it in my head. I didn't confront her right then. I didn't bang on the door or scream. Instead, I smiled, because sometimes when betrayal is so obvious, it frees you. The American dream was dead, sure, but something better was waiting. My revenge story, my rebirth, my exit from toxic love. I realized in that moment that the only way to win in this conspiracy of infidelity was not to play their game at all. So I drove home, sat on the porch with a beer, and stared out at the quiet suburban street. Somewhere behind those perfect lawns and flagpoles, every family hides a secret. Mine just happened to be the classic: a cheating wife, a fake friend, and a man learning to smile at the absurdity of it all. And that's how the promise of love turned into the punchline of betrayal. Americans love two things: football on Sundays and pretending they don't see the infidelity happening across the street. After I spotted Sarah's car in Tom's driveway, I started noticing the way neighbors looked at me. It was like I'd been voted off the island, Survivor style, but nobody told me. Mrs. Henderson across the street, who always watered her roses at exactly 7 a.m., suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. Mr. Miller, the guy who barbecued ribs so often his lawn smelled like mesquite year-round, stopped inviting me over for beer. That's when it hit me. The whole cul-de-sac was in on it. This wasn't just cheating, it was betrayal as a neighborhood project. You think I'm exaggerating? Listen, in America, when your wife cheats, the family doesn't just implode. It becomes a public event, a halftime show for the whole block. Everyone whispers, everyone knows, and you're the last guy to catch up. It's not just toxic love. It's community theater, starring my cheating wife and my so-called family friend. So I became a full-blown conspiracy theorist. I bought a notebook from Walmart, labeled it Operation Infidelity, and started writing down every suspicious move she made. Sarah claimed she was working late 3 times a week, but the factory doesn't even run second shift. Tom's lawn, which he used to mow religiously, started looking pristine again, like he'd been hosting late-night romantic landscaping sessions. And the strangest clue of all, Sarah started baking pies. My wife never baked a thing in her life, not even Pillsbury cookies. Suddenly, she's bringing Tom cherry pie at his doorstep? That's not love, that's treason wrapped in aluminum foil. And here's where the parody of it all kicks in. One night, while she's in the shower, I check her phone. Americans always think their privacy is sacred, but let me tell you, the real Declaration of Independence is hidden in your spouse's text messages. And there it was, hundreds of little betrayals. See you tonight, babe. Don't forget the wine. Last night was amazing. And the worst one, he'll never know. I laughed so hard I nearly woke her up. Because really, what's more American than a cheating wife texting her lover about how dumb her husband is, all while streaming Netflix in the next room? This wasn't just toxic love. It was a sitcom script that got rejected for being too cliché. But then my paranoia went nuclear. I started imagining it wasn't just Sarah and Tom. What if the neighbors were involved too? What if this was one big suburban swingers club and I was the only fool who didn't get the memo? Maybe they all gathered on Friday nights in somebody's basement, sipping Bud Light and laughing about poor Dave, still believing in family values. Maybe betrayal wasn't the exception here. It was the HOA rule. I needed proof. And in America, proof means surveillance. So I borrowed my cousin's hunting camera, you know, the kind you strap to a tree to catch deer. Except I wasn't hunting deer, I was hunting betrayal. I set it up behind the hedge, pointing straight at Tom's driveway. Within 2 nights, the evidence rolled in. Grainy black and white footage of Sarah sneaking out of her car, heels in hand, tiptoeing into his house at midnight. It looked like a bad ghost video on YouTube, except the ghost was my marriage. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek, handed me a thermos of coffee, and said, "Love you, honey." That's America for you, smiling on the front porch while stabbing you in the back. Infidelity with a Hallmark card smile. I thought about revenge again. The petty kind, like printing the photos and taping them to every mailbox in the cul-de-sac. Or maybe spray painting cheating wife across her Honda Civic. But then I thought, no, that's too small. This isn't just betrayal, this is theater. It deserves a finale. So I planned a setup. The next Saturday, Tom invited us all to his backyard barbecue, classic Midwest hospitality. Burgers, beers, kids running through sprinklers, the smell of charcoal in the air. I watched Sarah laugh too loudly at his jokes, watched his hand brush hers when he passed her the mustard. It was so obvious now, I wondered how I'd ever missed it. And then, in that moment, I realized the truth. They weren't even hiding it anymore. And maybe that's the real American tragedy. Not that marriages end, not that families collapse, but that betrayal gets so comfortable, so routine, it becomes part of the neighborhood landscape, like a mailbox or a lawn gnome. Nobody questions it. Nobody calls it out. They just accept it, sip their Bud Light, and move on. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't confront him. I just sat there, chewing my burger, smiling like I knew the ending before the credits rolled. Because the setup was clear. The revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be silent. And that, in America, is scarier than anything else. There's an old saying in America, if you want privacy, don't live in the suburbs. Because when the betrayal finally breaks open, every neighbor becomes a spectator, popcorn in hand, pretending they didn't already know. And so it was when I finally staged my confrontation. I didn't plan it like a normal husband would. You know, pulling Sarah aside in the kitchen, whispering, "How could you?" No, this was going to be primetime television. If my marriage was a sitcom, then I was ready to give the neighborhood a finale worth remembering. It started on a Tuesday night. Tom had invited the gang over for beers, burgers, and some rerun football game none of us actually cared about. The whole cul-de-sac showed up, lawn chairs circling his fire pit, kids running around like extras in a movie they didn't understand. And there she was, my cheating wife, laughing at his jokes with that perfect American smile, the one you'd expect to see on a toothpaste commercial. I waited until just the right moment. I stood up, raised my beer can like I was about to make a toast, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the neighborhood, I'd like to call this court to order. The case of the betrayed husband versus the cheating wife and her family friend." Silence, then nervous laughter. But I didn't break character. I slammed the can down on the picnic table like it was a gavel. "Order in the court." Mrs. Henderson nearly choked on her potato salad. Tom froze with a burger halfway to his mouth. Sarah's smile cracked like a windshield hit by a rock. And me? I was loving every second. This wasn't just confrontation, it was revenge, theater, and justice rolled into one. "Exhibit A," I announced, holding up my phone. On the screen, grainy footage from my hunting cam. There she was, sneaking into Tom's house at midnight. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you call it when your wife spends her nights at your so-called friend's house? Around here, we call it infidelity. And where I come from, we call it betrayal. Gasps, a few murmurs. Mr. Miller muttered, "Damn," under his breath. "Exhibit B," I continued, scrolling to the texts. "Last night was amazing. Don't forget the wine. He'll never know. I think we can all agree that's not a family prayer chain." Now the crowd wasn't laughing. They were watching like jurors in the O.J. trial. Sarah stood up, red-faced, yelling, "Stop it! You're humiliating me!" Tom tried to grab my phone, but I held it high like a prosecutor with the smoking gun. "You want humiliation?" I shot back. "You brought it here, Sarah. You and your toxic love story. You turned my family into a punchline. And Tom, my so-called brother, you turned friendship into betrayal." The fire pit crackled. The neighbors leaned in. This was better than Netflix, and it was free. That's when Sarah switched tactics. Tears. The classic American courtroom drama move. "It wasn't what you think," she cried. "I still love you. It was a mistake." A mistake. That's the word cheaters always use, as if infidelity is like burning a batch of cookies, as if betrayal is just a little oopsie. I wasn't buying it. Tom finally spoke up, his voice low and smug. "Man, don't make this bigger than it is. We didn't mean to hurt you." Didn't mean to hurt me. Right, just accidentally stabbed me in the back with the sharpest knife you could find. That's the thing about toxic love. It never admits what it really is. So I leaned in, grinning. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense rests. We've seen the evidence, we've heard the excuses, and I think the verdict is clear. Guilty of cheating, of betrayal, of destroying family. Applause broke out. I swear to God the neighbors actually clapped. Americans love drama as long as it isn't theirs. Sarah stormed off, face buried in her hands. Tom stood there, looking like a quarterback who just fumbled at the 1-yard line. And me? I raised my beer again, smiling at the absurdity of it all. Because here's the truth. Revenge doesn't always mean throwing punches. Sometimes it means turning the whole show into a parody so ridiculous that they can never live it down. From that night on, whenever people saw Tom mowing his lawn or Sarah walking the dog, they didn't just see two ordinary suburbanites. They saw Exhibit A and Exhibit B. They saw the guilty ones. They saw infidelity branded into the block like a scarlet letter on the mailbox. And as for me, I realized something standing there under the glow of tiki torches and suburban shame. I wasn't broken anymore. I was free. Because once betrayal is dragged into the open like that, it loses its power. The court of suburbia had spoken. Case closed. The courtroom of suburbia had adjourned, the jury of lawn chair neighbors dispersing back to their houses, whispering as though they'd just seen the Super Bowl of infidelity. Sarah disappeared inside with mascara streaked down her cheeks. Tom sulked by the grill-flipping burgers no one wanted anymore. And I was left standing in the glow of tiki torches like some victorious outlaw. But victory in America never feels clean. It feels like a fast food burger. Greasy, satisfying for a minute, then leaving you wondering what you just ate. I knew I'd never really get answers from Sarah. Why him? Why me? Why destroy a family built on all those Sunday promises? Cheating wives don't hand out logic. They hand out confusion, betrayal, and bills for therapy. So I did what any sane American man in my shoes would do. I left. Not just the barbecue. Not just Tom's backyard. I left it all. I walked past the picket fences, past the neatly parked SUVs, past the mailboxes lined up like soldiers guarding secrets. The whole neighborhood looked fake now, like one of those movie sets at Universal Studios, where the houses are hollow shells and the people are just extras playing Perfect Family until the director yells cut. Maybe that's what this was all along. Toxic love sold as the American dream. White wedding, white fence, white lies. Infidelity tucked behind closed doors, everyone pretending it's not happening because betrayal is bad for property values. But once you see the strings, you can't unsee them. I got into my old Chevy pickup, the same one Tom had helped me fix 100 times. Funny how betrayal always feels heavier when it's tied up with family memories. The leather seat still smelled faintly of her perfume from years ago. I turned the key and the engine roared like freedom. As I pulled away, I felt it, this weird, absurd lightness. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was smiling. Smiling like a fool who'd just watched his whole life burn down, but realized he didn't have to put out the fire. Because sometimes revenge isn't smashing the windows or torching the house. Sometimes revenge is surviving, thriving, and refusing to let their toxic love poison you any longer. On the radio, an old country song came on, the kind where the singer talks about losing his girl, his dog, his truck, but still finding a way to laugh about it. That's America right there. Turn your heartbreak into a tune and sell it at Walmart. I cranked the volume and sang along, windows rolled down, air rushing in. And that's when the thought hit me. Maybe it was never just about Sarah. Maybe the whole system is designed for betrayal. Think about it. TV shows glorify affairs. Movies make cheating look glamorous. Ads tell you happiness is always somewhere else, with someone else. What if the American dream itself is a scam, a conspiracy to keep us chasing loyalty in a world built on infidelity? My cheating wife wasn't just a person, she was the perfect metaphor. A glossy promise on the outside, rotting betrayal underneath. The smile on my face widened. Because once you realize the dream is fake, you're free. Free from her, free from him, free from the circus of neighbors pretending they're saints while sneaking around themselves. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe a bar off the interstate, maybe a cheap motel, maybe just the open road until the gas tank begged me to stop. All I knew was I wasn't going back. Sarah could keep Tom. Tom could keep Sarah. Let them stew in their toxic love and their quiet little betrayal kingdom. I had bigger plans. I pictured myself a year from now, leaner, meaner, living somewhere they couldn't reach me. Maybe I'd write a book, Cheating Wife, How Infidelity Saved My Life. Or maybe I'd just sit at some dive bar, sipping whiskey, laughing at how a suburban betrayal turned into my liberation story. And I kept smiling. Smiling because the pain was over. Smiling because betrayal had set me free. Smiling because nothing is more American than turning tragedy into entertainment. And I had just starred in the greatest parody of them all. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the cul-de-sac fading into the distance. The perfect lawns, the plastic smiles, the hollow houses. That life was dead to me. Ahead of me stretched the highway, endless, unwritten, real. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. So yeah. My wife promised she loved me. She swore on fireworks and church pews and family barbecues. But promises are cheap. Betrayal is priceless. And as I drove into the night with the radio blaring and the cool air rushing across my face, I realized something the whole neighborhood jury would never understand. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is walking away smiling.